at 6 in the morning, my alarm clock going off at 4:30 in the morning, and a whole team of people, and there's a completely mixed group of people. Some are hardcore Republicans, some are very much progressive liberals, but they all agree that Tim's the right guy, that we need to get beyond just the party label, certainly at the level of governor, and to have in effect the grown-up in the room, so that you don't have the spoiled kids playing mummy off against daddy, and in the meantime none of us win.
Right. Now, what would you do specifically to reduce the cost of our government and increase the take-home pays of our residents?
I think that, and I don't want to be repetitive, but what we did with the school building program, what Tim did as treasurer, is very real. I mean, those are real dollars. When you're talking about paying down that debt, $8 billion, when you're talking about not building $200 million high schools, when you're talking about not using the credit card and paying the interest costs every month on that, that's lowering that money. You translate that to the health care. You translate that to local aid, a willingness to take on business as usual in terms of how these things are done. I mean, I was on the Ways and Means Committee for years, and I would have a hard time explaining to your viewers all of the intricacies of how the local aid formula is done. It's really hard to fathom, and it's certainly not the approach to government of saying, what does it cost to pick health care, for example, especially when the state is subsidizing health care, to say, what does it cost and what do we need to do to provide good, quality, effective care to those folks that we're subsidizing? What can we do? Just like how can we build a school? It shouldn't cost $200 million. I mean, it's the same mindset, and it's a willingness to buck the system and to challenge things. So that would certainly be one thing. The other thing, again, business as usual not being done. And it's a good example. Folks ask me oftentimes, Paul, you were a Republican. Why did you want to enroll? Why aren't you just with the Republican candidate? Why are you with Tim? And again, I look at the model of the school building, but I also look with the pension fund. The way it was done, business as usual before, every treasurer, Republican and Democrat, was getting about $12 million a year in fee income. So, you park billions of dollars in a certain fund, you get a tiny little percentage, but it comes back to the Treasury. And it's not improper, it's not graft or anything, but it's money that the Treasurer's office would have that they did not rely on the legislature to appropriate. So in effect, it kind of gives power to your office. And Tim came in and changed that right off the bat. And I mean, I asked the viewers out there, who before the last recession hit was talking about counterparty risk? I mean, really nobody, but Tim was. And he made them change and diversify, which if he had just done that would have been an amazing accomplishment. But you can't just call up your stockbroker and say, hey, I want to move $10 billion. I mean, it's a lengthy process, about an 8-month period where you have to go through all various hoops and paperwork in a very clear, professional way. And he did that. And he went through all these hoops as if he were going to move the money. He was as careful with the state's money as he would have been if it was his own personal money. And as a result, when Bear Stearns went under, we had almost no loss. But the really cool thing was when Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, biggest bankruptcy in the United States history. And any guess who the very first payee in the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy was? The Massachusetts Treasury, and we got 100 cents on the dollar. People, you don't hear that. It isn't sexy. It doesn't make the front page of the Herald or the Globe. But for somebody that, like me, that was, saw firsthand, that was looking at the numbers, looking at meaningful, responsive, effective government, if Tim hadn't done that, we would be in such an unbelievably worse state as a Commonwealth right now, like many of the other states are. I mean, not only has the Treasury fund investment value rebounded, but that's in large part because we preserved the value. If Tim had done business as usual, we would have suffered major losses, and yet those pensions are still due. The state would have had to come up with the money to keep paying. So that's something in terms of folks that are looking, they should look beyond the nonsense and look at the real record that's out there. As I say, it's not a question that the money isn't there. The answer to the problems in this state is not more taxes. and it's certainly not more big government.
Which leads me to my next question to you. Would you support lowering all state employees' salaries with the highest pay cut to close the deficit?
Well, I think that one of the things that I found that's been somewhat troubling, and again, I say this as somebody who has a great respect for the institution, the legislature. You know, there's good and there's bad. Oftentimes, the press likes to report on just the bad. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of people that really, you know, are looking to do the right thing. But oftentimes, and I'm finding it more often, people are governing based more on the quick hit in the Boston Herald or the Globe, trying to worry about the headline. There's a lot of nonsense, again, in terms of some of the pension stuff. I mean, yeah, it's really bad when the governor tries to take a senator and stick her into a job for $175,000 that's been vacant for years and years and years, and you know, knowing that that's going to have serious ramifications not only on the salary that you're currently paying, but on the pension. It's that story that makes the front page. But you know, the social worker that's out there barely getting $20,000 a year, the police and the firemen, we're talking about their pensions and their benefits. You know, the average person out there is getting a very modest amount of money that's there. And so I guess the question, to be responsive, it isn't to use a scapegoat. I mean, you know, we're all seeing the values of our 401k plummet. People are saying, hey, people are nervous, they're scared, they're not seeing value. But it's easy to just point a finger at state workers. You know, again, your state workers are your policemen, your firemen, your teachers. You know, I've been, this past month, every day that I was out there, I was into a different police station and fire station, and they're scared. The rhetoric that's being thrown around scares these people. And, you know, we shouldn't be surprised when a few years from now, no one wants to go into police when they're under attack, when public safety is under attack. To kind of answer your question, though, is, by the same token, I'm not giving a pass for the system. There's a lot of abuse that's there. You have people, you know, trying to pad their pensions. And again, Tim has been very tough. People are trying to put their parking and their, you know, their per diem that they get for going to the state and trying to juice the system. And Tim has been very, very aggressive in terms of going after the extremes. And when you see state pensions based on salaries at $200,000-300,000, yeah, those are serious things that we need to look at and step back and say, do we really need that kind of money at a state level? It's not the private sector. But we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, the folks that are out there, we have to be very careful about the hires that we do. We have to be very careful about the benefits that we negotiate. You know, too often it's been the big government's going to just throw the money in later. They don't worry about it today. Oh, sure, we'll give that extra concession or we'll raise that salary. We have to, again, start treating it like we would treat our own money in a business, but it's not a business.
Now, let me ask you, would you favor a bill that would strengthen the Consumer Protection Agency that would require lawyers' licenses, for example, and I understand you're an attorney as well, to handle under an independent licensing board like the rest of the other professions?
I think that as a legislator, that would be considered. If a bill is filed to do that, the legislation will be heard, it'll be considered. I would have to say that as a lawyer and as a member of the Massachusetts Bar, I think we have a long history and tradition of the Massachusetts Bar. We certainly have one of the preeminent systems. Now, that's not to say that everything's great about it, but we certainly have, my own personal view would be I'd rather work and find out what's not working and try to fix it, either get the Supreme Judicial Court to change the rules on the bar to fix what's wrong, or to have the legislature do it if they won't. But I don't, at least without consider, I'd be open to looking at it. I always looked at both sides of every issue as a legislator, as lieutenant governor, and working with Tim. We'll certainly continue to do that, but I don't know that I would right off the bat say that the bar system is broken in Massachusetts. I think it certainly could be improved somewhat, but
reform
I hope that,
all the way around.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Do you see anything wrong with professions working two branches of government for example, lawyers serving legislation, passing bills that would affect their income directly?
We have very strict ethics laws in Massachusetts. The average people looking at that, I mean, the Ethics Commission actually told me to take a pill one time. They said I was calling them up too often. I mean, I think that you have to always look out for conflict of interest and abuse. I was an attorney, am an attorney, but I kept a complete wallop. I can proudly say that I went through my entire time as state representative, never got one client out of it. Wasn't looking for clients. I mean, I think that you can always find people that are willing to try to pad their own pockets, but my seeing a lot of the people is a lot of people were there for the right reasons. I may have thought they were misguided or off, but most people that I interacted with weren't doing it, for less than straightforward reasons. But in terms of the rules are very, very strict, and there's a lot of disclosure that's required, but you can always be more vigilant. I mean, there are problems. Nothing. I don't mean to be giving the impression that everything's perfect. We've got serious issues. Again, with the casino issue, I was and remain very concerned that we have to toughen the disclosure laws on that. Other states like Michigan, you're outlawed from giving money to candidates if they're in a certain relationship to these casinos. Here in Massachusetts, we may be opening up a box. That's something that we'll be looking at. We need to always be on guard, and you as a voter should always be able to go right online and say, that Paul lascocco, he's getting 80% of his money from this group or that group. It's a good system, but we need to make sure it's working.
So we can expect open and transparency
Absolutely.
with the Tim Cahill and lascocco.
Absolutely.
Great. We're running out of time real quickly. I just wanted to get this question in. You suggested at one point that the Commonwealth gets out of the business of marriage entirely. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what you meant by that and how that would benefit? If we only have a minute, it's a long debate. I mean, my view on that issue was you had a court process making a decision based on political rather than judicial reasoning, and we had a time frame that went from 2003 to 2007, and one of the approaches that I had was and had an amendment filed would really to try to make marriage a civil institution. Everybody gets the same civil institution, and let the state more or less get out of the business. The fight on that isn't over. There's going to be issues in terms of who gets to do the marriage. I mean, it's an ongoing political mess. But I think that the government should be looking to really provide value and provide accountability in government. And I think that too often we get distracted with a lot of side issues. And family needs government to get away from the family. We shouldn't have government legislating one way or the other. Exactly. We have a minute left. If any of the viewers out of the 36 communities that watch this program want to be able to donate to your campaign or reach out to you and support you somehow, hang signs, how do they do that? Well, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, my cell phone is I've always given my cell phone out, and I'll be happy to give it here to your viewers. It's 508-361-7405. But probably the best way to reach out would either be to go to timforgovernor.com or paulforlg.com, paulforlg or timforgovernor.com. We try to be fully accessible to people. We're looking to do things differently. We're looking to give people a positive reason to vote for us. I would just say to your viewers, we're about not business as usual. I know you hear that all the time, but I have a voting record behind it. Tim has a record behind him. And we mean it, and we're looking to change things. Well, we wish you all the best on your campaign trail, and thank you for appearing. We'll have your running. My name is Hector Montalvo. Watch us next time when we go behind the scenes to ask the tough questions, bring you their response.